welcome to the Easton School
Oh.
Committee meeting. We all
Excuse
set?
me. I'm sorry, but we have to do a reorganization this evening.
Okay, so we start with that.
Sorry.
I'll give it to you, Dr. Cabral.
Okay, sorry about that. So we are holding our school committee meeting after an election, and so that requires a reorganization, as I just explained. So in keeping with the state of emergency brought on by COVID-19 pandemic, public bodies can meet remotely per Governor Baker's orders. Easton's boards with essential business will meet during the state of emergency remotely to maximize social distancing. Questions can be sent to the Q&A or the chat or Q&A feature. The meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by ECAT. To use the Zoom, you will need to download the Zoom application or use the link on the agenda, or you can access it live on the ECAT stream. For the reorganization of the school committee, town elections took place on June 27th. Therefore, a reorganization of the committee will take place. We will now vote to appoint a chair and a vice chair. I don't know if there is a motion for chair.
I nominate Nancy DeLuca to continue in the role of chair.
Thank you.
Second, was that Jackie?
Wiseman, yep.
Second on the motion, all in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
Can I vote for myself?
Yes.
DeLuca, yes.
The democratic
Yeah.
process.
Star, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So you're going to do the vice chair vote.
Okay, I would like to nominate Jackie Wiseman as school committee vice chair.
I'm actually interested in that position this year.
Okay. Does anybody want to speak to either motion for any
Maybe
reason?
we should have co-vice chairs.
Well, I think, you know, Nancy and Jackie have had positions of leadership for the last 3 years, and we're a 5-member team, all of us equally capable of the positions. And I think that if people would like to step up, they should have that opportunity for any of the positions.
True.
And that, so as chair, that I just finished 1 year as chair, and I'm happy to do it. It was quite a tumultuous year, and I think it's going to be tumultuous again. So I'm happy to continue, you know, have some continuity going on. I find, you know, Jackie has, you know, she's, and Michelle, you too. I mean, you both, everybody is very well suited to be, you know, on the leadership part of this. So I just think Jackie has done the chair for 2 years, and now I'd like to make her vice chair for 2 years.
Well, I
And understand what you're saying, Michelle. I understand what you're saying. Does anybody else want to speak to anything here?
Well, based on
Go ahead.
tradition, we really never had a tradition about vice chair. We just did for chair. And my assumption, I mean, I could be wrong, of course, but my assumption is that Michelle would be up for chair next year. I don't think the vice chair role has ever really, I mean, some people have been vice chair for 1 year, sometimes for 3 years. I mean, that's been all over the map, because honestly, not to in any way minimize what Jackie or anyone else has done as vice chair, but it's not a particularly active role. I mean, that's actually pretty fortunate. So, you know, I want to respect Nancy's nomination, but Michelle, you've been, you know, contributing a great deal, and your energy is fantastic. I just feel like being vice chair is not really critical. I do think that you'll be the person that logically would assume chairmanship next year, chairwomanship, I guess. So that's, anyway, does anyone else want to address this?
Yeah, so, and again, this is because, you know, I'm just finishing up my first year, right? So this is all kind of new, relatively new. So in past organizations, what I've typically seen is the vice chair is a way to learn the responsibilities of the chair role, so that you become the person who, you know, would, you know, kind of be the next logical choice to step into that role has the opportunity to take on greater responsibility and learn. So I think we're in a position where there's certainly, I think there's a need for that if Michelle would be interested in going for the chair, as would be next in the rotation in the tradition of the committee, to have the opportunity to take on more responsibility and learn, more closely what the chair does. At the same time, we're also in this really, really, I hate to use the word unprecedented, but it is unprecedented, right? Where we've never, as a committee, had to deal with, trying to figure out how to educate children in a pandemic while the school is being built, and we're in the middle of a financial crisis. So from that standpoint, I think Jackie's experience is really incredibly valuable to have that. But it's not like if like either one of you can't do that from not being the vice chair. I'm sure Jackie is not going to say, well, forget it, I'm not helping you with X, Y, and Z. Or Michelle would say, well, I'm not going to, have the opportunity to learn some more of the leadership. So, so I can definitely see the value in both scenarios. And I think if we weren't in such a challenging time, then I think it would probably, in my thinking, be very logical to have Michelle take the vice
also,
chair positions.
I'm coming from the perspective of a teacher going through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the distant learning and the trying to find what education is on. So that perspective I also bring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Would anyone else like to speak to either nominee? Okay.
Well,
So
Jackie, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's a little awkward.
Yes, it is awkward. I know, but the rest of us have had to be awkward in there.
I think one of the thoughts behind my being vice chair to Nancy's chair, it wasn't so much the learning, because honestly, as vice chair, the role is very minimal, if sometimes, if ever. It was more as a backup because Nancy had, she has a sister who's a teacher in the district, and she has other relatives who work in the school district. And so there was the thought that she may have to recuse herself more than a chair normally would, just because of her relationships. And since I had been chair, that it would be easier for me to step in and assume that role in those types of situations.
That's a good point. Now, did we find those scenarios to be as frequent as thought? And I guess the other question is, right, looking at where we are in bargaining cycles and things like that, where are there things, Nancy, that you anticipate coming up in the next year where you would have to see yourself, recusing yourself for various reasons?
Right. So, for example, I believe Jackie and Caroline are on the negotiating team, and I will, as long as I'm a school committee member and I have a relative in the union, I will never be able to be on the negotiating team. Mm-hmm. And then I do not vote when that particular thing comes. Or I filled in the legal paperwork about, that, having the relative in place.
The disclosure,
so,
yeah.
It's happened a couple of times, but not a lot. But I understand what Jackie's saying, that, it could happen, it could come up, I don't know. But
would Jackie would still be on the committee as an advisor? Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's up to you. We can take a vote on this now and see what comes out. And if it's something we have to reopen again, we'll do it,
What's wrong with the idea of having co-vice chairs? I was always the parent who wanted a tie in Little League. Huh?
Does it get a little cumbersome at all or not? I don't know. So
I don't know about the legality of it. A lot of times, if I have an important piece of information to share, I send it to the chair and the vice chair. I don't know if it's problematic to send it to 3 people. I honestly don't know the answer to that. That's the only question I would have.
Because we can't meet with more than, if you're on a committee, there can't be more than 2 school committee people on it. So if you guys want to do co-chairs and we find out later that it can't be done, if Leisha finds out the rules on that, or I can find out from MASC, I guess.
You could also, you could almost do a rotation in terms of the communication, or you could separately, I mean, obviously if the chair's not available, you'd have to have the first line of communication, you know, or you could, like I said, rotate it over a period of time. But I think we could try a co-vice chair.
The other thing too is on when we have our Friday meetings, you know, I know Michelle, you still have to be in where you're gonna be. So if you have the co-chairs, then, and I couldn't be there for some reason, Jackie could take those Friday meeting, if we ever get back to normal, that's for sure. But take the Friday meeting and then you could do the third, you know what I'm saying? The evening meetings.
That doesn't happen very often though, correct? I mean, it might be
Well,
something I could work through with my work.
If we do get back to our 9 a.m. meetings, it happens, yeah. I don't know how many 9 a.m. meetings we have. I think they're 4.
Right, but for the rarity that happened, I could
Right.
figure it out with my
And
work.
especially now where we're meeting on Zoom at 5 o'clock, you know, that's what we've been doing. So, okay, so do we need to have a nomination? Does it have to be a specific nomination, like saying, I nominate Jackie and Michelle to co-chair as
Co-vice chair. Co-vice chair.
Co-vice chairs.
Yeah,
So
I
I'll
think you have
make
to have
that
a
motion.
particular nomination. Do you want to make
So
that like you did before?
Yes, I make that nomination that they be
Okay.
co-chair. We'll
O'Neill
try it.
O'Neill second?
Okay, so let's vote.
O'Neill, yes?
Are you gonna vote, Michelle?
I don't know. I really would like the position. I think that I've been on the school committee long enough to handle a vice chair. So,
Okay. So DeLuca, yes, for co-chairs, co-vice chairs.
Wiseman, yes.
Jen, how do you feel?
I'm still thinking. I think it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but Star, yes.
Okay,
We can revisit
So-
it. I mean,
we can. Let's start out like this. I'm gonna check in with the whole legal process, if this is okay to do. Let's start out like now, and if it comes up, then we'll revisit this at the next meeting or at whatever point we need to. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yes, okay,
Sure, sounds good.
all right. Okay, the first thing on the agenda, well, not the first thing now, but the minutes of May 28th. Are there any comments or corrections or questions? By the way, Lynn, thank you very much for putting everything on that OneDrive. That's awesome.
very helpful.
Are there any comments, questions? Okay, do I have a motion to accept the school committee minutes of Thursday, May 28th, 2020?
So moved. It's
And-
Star second.
Okay, all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes?
France, yes?
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. The next is the Easton School Committee meeting minutes of Thursday, June 4th, 2020. Any comments, questions, or corrections? No? Okay, do I have a motion to accept the Easton School Committee meeting minutes of Thursday, June 4th, 2020?
So moved,
moved.
O'Neill.
Second.
Okay, Jen, you get it. I will second it. O'Neill
All
second.
right.
Of those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
France, yes?
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. Easton School Committee meeting minutes of Thursday, June 18th, 2020. Any comments, questions, or corrections? All those, do I have a motion?
So moved,
to
Wiseman.
accept? Okay, thank you.
Durant
And a
second.
second? Okay,
Durant
Michelle,
second.
all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Next up is approval of a G&G Fitness Incorporated, and to authorize the chair to sign the contract. Dr. Cabral. You're on mute, Leisha. You're on mute. It's all right.
Sorry.
No problem.
This is a contract for G&G Fitness for, to authorize the chair to sign the contract. David Twombly, the Director of Operations, is here to discuss it and answer any questions. This company is a member of the Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium that we purchased from, and he can give you some more details.
Yeah, so there's really not more to add than what Alicia just mentioned. It's actually Gronk Fitness, and they are on the Mass Higher Education Consortium bid list. We purchased a lot of fitness and cardio equipment from them for our fitness center and for the phys ed program. And so basically there's a couple other contracts that I'll be bringing back to you to approve. This is one of them as the summer progresses. So we're just looking for approval from the committee so that we can purchase cardio equipment and fitness equipment from Gronk Fitness. That's pretty much about it.
So David, how
Any
often
questions?
do we purchase this during like you said, we purchased things from them before?
Yep.
Have we purchased a lot or?
It really depends. It kind of depends if an important piece of equipment breaks, we may replace it. Usually at the end of the year, depending on how budget things kind of shake out, we do some purchasing then. So really it's kind of random, but it's not really consistent, but we do want to have a contract in place so that if we need to replace something or purchase stuff at the end of the year, we have a contract in place. And they've actually been really good. We've purchased some other equipment from them in the past. We haven't brought a contract in front of you guys, but because we're on the Mass Higher Ed Consortium, we'd rather have a contract in place. In fact, the town accountant will not release a check if we go over the $10,000 mark. You have to have a contract in place, and because they're on Mass Higher Education Consortium, we can easily do a contract with them. We get the best pricing from them because they're on a contract with the state, basically, so you get better pricing.
And just 2 points of clarification. One is that the fitness equipment is what is used we have it at the high school and the middle school, both for physical education and for student athletes. And, obviously we don't want equipment that is dangerous or broken or heavily damaged so that someone would injure themselves. But the second point of clarification is that this is money, so the budget, FY20 budget is coming up. That's what this is being purchased with, the closure of this current school year. And so we're going to talk about different things that were able to be purchased because of some savings that could not be used specifically for staffing or personnel. But we'll explain that in more detail when we get to the budget. But I just wanted to explain that's not coming from the very troublesome next year's budget. And there are very specific reasons we had this available, and we'll talk about it when we get to the budget item.
So are we just voting on the authority to enter into a contract, not for a specific purchase, or is there specific purchases that are tied to this?
For the chair to sign the contract.
Okay, thank you.
But we're not purchasing anything right now.
We're not purchasing anything right now, but we have
Right.
purchased stuff like at the end of the fiscal year, or we may purchase things throughout the school year. So it's really to allow us during fiscal year 21 to purchase equipment for the school department.
You know
if we
how
need to.
you do your annual contract signing, and we did that 1 or 2 meetings ago, and it allows us to purchase equipment from particular vendors. This allows you, excuse me, to pre-approve the vendor for the chair to sign on it. It just wasn't part of that packet because we hadn't used them at that point.
Yeah,
So
I would say
I
that
have-
Alicia hit the nail on the head
Go
on
ahead.
that, because I will be, again, like I said a little while ago, we'll be bringing some additional contracts forward, because especially with this COVID thing, there's a lot of materials, PPE materials that we have to purchase. So we're entering into contracts. The other thing is this is like a double coverage, because the state has already approved these vendors. It's just more of a formality with the town that we have these 2-page contracts so that the town accountant can release checks when we purchase materials. Kind of getting into the weeds, but that's basically what it is.
So by having a contract with them, we're supposedly getting the best price we possibly can on fitness equipment.
Exactly, yes.
They've been pre-vetted by the state for us, yes.
Because I would imagine that there's companies in Massachusetts that sell fitness equipment and are not on the consortium, right?
That's true, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Because, I know he played for the Patriots and he's a big time guy and all that, but I don't want to just go with a contract because it's got Gronk's name on it. Sorry.
Actually, I don't even think he's the owner of this business.
No,
I think it's his father or his
I think it's his
brother.
brother or something, I think.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with a person.
Well, it does, but it doesn't. Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or
Not for us.
comments or anything? What?
I said, not for
What?
us. He doesn't like come and install it or anything.
That'd be
He's all the way
nice.
down in Tampa Bay now. He's not coming up to Massachusetts.
Mhm.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions for David or Alicia? All right. Do I have a motion to accept G&G Fitness Equipment contract and authorize me to sign the contract?
O'Neill, so moved.
Durant, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the Lexia Literacy Program contract and authorize the chair to sign. Dr. Cabral.
Okay, this is Assistant Superintendent Chrissy Pruitt will talk about this. This is a program she has spoken about before, Lexia Literacy Program contract, and this is to authorize the chair to sign the contract.
So the Lexia program was previously purchased in Easton very sporadically for the use for students in special education. We did not have a large population using Lexia. However, once COVID closed our classrooms down and we switched to remote learning, Lexia was used for the remote learning plans as it was free. Lexia offered it free to all districts, and we took advantage of that. It was a very instrumental part of our remote learning program in K through 8th grade. So we feel that with the possibility of heading to remote learning again, this is an asset that we will need to have in place. The other thing too is that the teachers really see it as a benefit, not just for remote learning, but in classrooms as well. We are fortunate enough to be receiving some of the CARES money through the municipalities and the schools, the federal money, and this would be earmarked for that, for use of those funds. And that is strictly due to the COVID crisis.
Right, so just to clarify or to punctuate, because Chrissy said it very clearly, the money that will be used for this is from CARES Act federal reimbursement money. It is not from the operating budget of either fiscal year. This is something that the government has determined can be used as COVID related, and that is for backfilling skills due to regression based on the closure of school.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments?
I love
So
Lexia.
just let-
It's a great
Go
tier
ahead.
2 program. It's adaptive. It has an intervention component. It's a really great resource for teachers.
And it's great for tier 1 as well. If
Right.
all students are at home, and that's what we were using it as tier 2 and really tier 3 actually.
Yep.
And now that, you know, our teachers have more fluidity with the use of it and have more experience with it, they're finding it to be a major asset to their programming.
May I
And
ask Michelle,
Oh, go ahead,
Nancy,
Caroline.
Michelle, how long have you been using it?
I've been using Lexia for about 6 years.
Wow.
As a reading coach, I love it for my students. I love it. There's many different layers to it. There's different ways, to Chrissy's point, that you can use it in different tiers of instruction and intervention. It's a great interactive program, and especially if students, whether they're in class or at home, it adapts to their level, it reteaches, it pops out intervention lessons if a child gets stuck that can be used. It's a really great all-around program.
Good to
And
hear.
my question is, you can use it online. I think you said this, Chrissy. I just want to repeat.
Yes.
It is
Online and in school.
In
Both.
school online. So it would be something that the teachers would
Or
utilize in the
think
They can
classroom.
access it from home though.
Correct.
So remote and in the schoolroom. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I used Lexia about 10 years ago, and it was fantastic then, and it's even better now. Unfortunately, it is pricey, and so we may not be able to continue it after the CARES money.
As a tier 1.
After we don't have that anymore as a tier 1, which is really disappointing, but it's going to really hopefully help with any regression of skills that we may have faced in reading.
Are there any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to accept the Lexia Literacy Program contract and authorize the chair to sign the contract?
So moved, Durance.
Star, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes?
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. 2020 senior update, Dr. Cabral.
This is I think Vice Chair Durance's agenda item.
Well, Michelle asked to put it on there because she there's kind of information all over the place. So is there a list or
A lot of questions of where it's at.
a lot of questions
Things
about
were supposed
what
to happen
what
in
the
July.
seniors are doing this summer? Go ahead, Michelle. You can ask the question.
Well, I was asked to ask because a lot of the events were slated for July prior to the August 1st graduation, and they haven't heard
I just
visually anyway about things, so they were just asking what the updates were.
Okay. I just received a communication actually from the senior, earlier in the week from the senior officers. So I believe they did reach out to all of the students to let them know that the prom, the boat cruise, and the cookout, they were unable to hold those. Those are things that the state has not opened up yet for us to be able to utilize. Even the largest under phase 3, the largest gathering is 100 people, and we have well over 200 in the senior class. So they can't do that just based on the state guidelines. It remains, the one item we do have is the August 1st graduation that remains. And I think Mr. Paul not only sent the information early, but I think he just sent an update on that to everyone, parents and students. And it's available on the website as well.
On the EPS website?
And
Okay.
I would imagine it's on OA, but I would have to check first, but yes. So August 1st is the graduation. That's the only event we have planned.
Isn't
Thank you.
there, I thought there was a parade scheduled for the 26th. I've seen some communication on that.
So that a parent group is putting that together.
Okay.
So that is not a school run event. So the parents that run Safe Grad Night, and I apologize,
That's right.
I don't know offhand the names of the organizers, but there are parent organizers putting together a senior parade. And so that's not a school event. And there's also people are discussing a boat cruise, but that is also not a school sponsored event, and the school is not organizing that. We can't do that right now. So all of those would be private events, or not school created or advertised events.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, Michelle, does that answer everything?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thanks. And the graduation is August 1st at the high school, correct?
Yes, on the,
Baseball field,
not the turf. Yeah, the baseball field.
baseball field.
Yes, and more details are coming out about that because, you know, we obviously have to run everything by the town. We're working in close cooperation with them, and this is an agenda item on Monday's Board of Health meeting. So
Okay,
they're going to hopefully give their endorsement to the plan. I know that Mr. Paul and the staff at the high school, we've been working closely together, and they've been working very hard to make sure that it dots all the I's and crosses all the T's. Of course, we want everyone to remain safe and have a wonderful experience. So that's where we are with it. But we can't say we have the endorsement of the board because they're meeting on it Monday.
okay, thank you. Number 8, discussion and possible vote to support anti-racism resolution. Dr. Cabral.
So you may be aware that the Mass Association of School Committees, of which you are members, posted on their website a resolution that many districts have supported. It's called the Anti-Racism Resolution, and if it is supported, it will be sent to our local representatives, state senators, MASC, and posted on our website, similar to other resolutions that you have voted on. This is strictly for your review and consideration. If you choose to do this, we will push it out to all of those organizations for you.
Any comments or questions on the document?
Sure. So I fully support this. Wondering what we would think. The one thing I think that's kind of missing is that the state curriculum guidelines don't really adequately address racial issues at this point in time. So I'm wondering what we think about adding a statement about, you know, whereas we encourage or demand or whatever the Department of, you know, DESE to incorporate, you know, however the wording is, but to you know, to really start to look at the curriculum guidelines to incorporate that kind of content that we would like to see across the state. Caroline, what do you think? I saw your hand.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's really a good idea because, you know, we've been working on this already for some time, you know, trying to do that very thing, you know, incorporate consideration of, well, to really incorporate an anti-racist culture into the curriculum. And I know that sounds a little weird the way I put it, but so I think that's actually a great idea. Are there any limitations for us if we don't adopt the exact, I thought there was like a couple of grammatical things I had issue with anyway, but do we have to adopt the exact resolution for any reason, or could we just add it?
It's a model and you can absolutely use it as you wish.
No, I like that idea of saying that we encourage yeah, go ahead.
So Jen, do you want to write a little, another whereas with that statement in there, and then Caroline, you go through and with your red pen and fix the grammar mistakes.
I don't know if I can see them on my little phone, I'll try to find.
I can print you out a copy and drop it off. And then send them to me, let me read, you know, put it back
I
up.
think we may need to amend it today and go ahead and adopt it. I don't know that we should put it off. Can't we just have Jen, I mean, I think, you know, whereas we encourage the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to incorporate, how would you say this, Jen? Consideration of.
While she's writing that, I have a question up at the top. It says Town of Easton in school committee. What does that mean?
Should be Town of Easton School Committee.
So no in, get rid of the in.
Right, good point. Okay. I didn't see that. I didn't look at the title.
Caroline, I found something you didn't. Wow.
Well, yeah, and I'm not even sure I'm right about the thing. Like whereas it is the responsibility that every district provide to all district staff, including school committee members, should be a comma after member,
Okay,
But that's nothing. I mean, annual professional development in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And wait a minute, that was not there was a place where they I have to find it now. It's very hard on this teeny little phone. Okay, I think it's down toward resolved, the Easton Public Schools School Committee. That's a little awkward. Shouldn't we just say the Easton School Committee? I don't think that, I mean, or the School Committee of the Easton, I don't know. Anyway, but that's not important either. It's and all the school districts in the Commonwealth must guarantee that racist practices are eradicated and diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded. So that was the one that really should be R. Yeah. That was the one that really bugged me. And then the last, I'm a little bit unclear what they're doing here. At the end, we must ensure that our school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist. That acknowledges that all lives, I don't know what they're meaning to say there. I mean, seriously, folks.
Yeah.
This is our professional organization. This is their mom. Sorry. But, so what do you think they're exactly, what was that link that they're trying to make there between anti-racist? Do we want, is it and acknowledges?
I think acknowledges.
Okay, good.
So I think, what do we think of, and I'm just going to steal the language from the whereas every district incorporate into their curriculum. How about whereas we encourage the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to adopt into statewide curriculum guidelines that include the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives.
Good, I like it.
Can you, Jen, will you say that one more time, please?
Of course, yes. Okay, first of all, I guess before I repeat that, Michelle or Jackie, any suggestions on that or good on that? Okay.
Like your change, yeah.
Okay, all right, so Nancy, it's whereas, comma, we encourage the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to adopt into statewide curriculum guidelines or standards. Chrissy, what's the right word? Standards? Okay.
It would be frameworks.
Frameworks, okay.
Social justice frameworks, almost.
Okay.
Let's see, to adopt into statewide curriculum frameworks, that the history of racial oppression. Now, hold on. Hold on a second. That doesn't make sense. To adopt into statewide curriculum frameworks. Sorry, that
include.
Yes.
That include the history of racial oppression.
To adopt into statewide curriculum. Yes, frameworks that include the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives. Or Chrissy, what would you suggest there actually as our curriculum expert?
Well, I would actually use the term authors of color.
Okay.
Not limiting it just to Black authors, but also Hispanic authors, and just knowing what Easton is working on.
Yeah, that's excellent.
No, that makes sense. Yep.
And I would say, yeah, I like that.
So Nancy, did you get all that?
I did.
Okay.
And then
Can we go back that last thing again? If we say and, we have to say and acknowledge, not acknowledges. If we're going to change that to and at the bottom.
We're going to change that to and.
I would actually say we must ensure our own school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist, and we must acknowledge.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think, Jen, about kind of?
I think it adds a little clarity there. I would. Yeah, I like your suggestion.
And we must acknowledge that all lives matter, cannot matter unless Black lives matter. Okay. AP standard now is to capitalize black. That kind of fell into place about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's quite new, but that is the AP standard now. So I would capitalize black also. There.
We have a suggestion in the Q&A.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I'm so sorry from, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. Oh, from, she had given a suggestion before in a previous meeting, and I don't remember what she told us to call her, but Medjin Now from 94, is it Lincoln Street? She said instead of suggestion, authors of multicultural or diverse backgrounds rather than authors of color.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, because it covers religion
That's a
and
good
other.
suggestion. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
And then she also said, good, you do a good job. Thank
Jen
you.
always does a great job.
Well, I think that was to Chrissy on the
No,
pronunciation.
And Chrissy too, yes.
I think that was to you.
Both
Now,
of you do a great job.
Jen's whereas goes after the last whereas, before the resolved, in between the
Yes.
where. Okay, so
Yes.
Jen's whereas is going
Right.
to go in the middle there. Okay.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Okay.
She said it was a
And you
good
had a
job on pronouncing her name.
Oh,
Good,
excellent.
good,
There
good.
we go.
So
Perfect.
1, 2,
Thank you.
3, 4. So the fifth whereas down has the word black, so that gets a capital B also.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And then what did we decide about resolved? Because it is kind of weird that Easton Public Schools School Committee, that is kind of weird.
Yeah,
What do
so
we-
just
we
Easton
write
School
something
Committee. Don't
else?
you think just the Easton School Committee? I mean, I don't think there are any other, I don't think anyone's gonna question
Confuse
that.
us with the other non-existent
Yes,
school committee in
exactly.
Easton. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So get rid of public schools and just put the Easton School Committee.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right, very good. So with those corrections, do I have a motion to accept the anti-racism resolution as we have corrected it?
O'Neill, so moved.
Durant second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Next up, COVID-19 update, Dr. Cabral.
Thank you. So I want to begin by thanking you all again. All of you are members of at least one of our subgroups, and if not more, and we appreciate that input very much. To remind the public, we have 7 working subgroups right now, trying to examine every possible aspect of what a return to school would be like. We have teaching and learning chaired by Assistant Superintendent Chrissy Pruitt, which is considering the 3 plans that we have been directed by the commissioner to produce by July 31st. That is a full in-person return to school, a full remote learning, and a hybrid of some sort that would be specific to Easton. We also have, as you can imagine, that then has some implications for technology. We have a committee focused specifically on technology, co-chaired by Chrissy Pruitt and the Director of Technology, John Souza. They are considering everything from the purchase of technology to overseeing the borrowing of the devices that we've already let about 350 devices go out to people for use over the spring quarter, but also over the summer, to try to minimize regression and help students who are in summer school. Everything from the borrowing of the devices, purchasing, but also looking at the most universally applicable software that the teachers can use, and also professional development on how everyone, including parents, can feel more comfortable with the technology one thing that we are focusing on in all of our groups is that whether we go to a full in-person model in the fall, we do have to be prepared for remote and for potentially an immediate pivot to remote at any time. It could be for, an outbreak of some sort, whether it is one student, one classroom, one school, district-wide. So we need to be able to adapt in that way. And then, of course, there's also the possibility that in the winter or the spring, there could be a recurrence of this virus before a treatment is found, widely available treatment is found. So we do have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. So the technology and teaching and learning committees are working very closely with one another. You're going to see there's a lot of overlap in some of these groups. What we're doing is every Friday, the chairs of all the committees are coming together. We're sharing all the information, making sure that it's coordinated, calibrated. Nothing's falling between the cracks. We are sharing our ideas and information and getting that all set. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. Then we have special education and English language learners. This is a very sensitive population, particularly when their routines are disrupted. We want to make sure that service continues and that service is rigorous and robust. And so whether that's in person or remote, we have many professionals working on ensuring that information is available in multiple languages, making sure that the devices that students use in school or the services that they receive are able to be replicated equitably online, those kinds of things. We also have a health and wellness, including physical and social emotional wellness. We think that that is such an important set of goals for us that we 100% want to ensure above everything else, before we even go back into a building, that the social, emotional, and physical wellness of our staff and our students is something that we are confident in. And so again, we have a great group of professionals. Both the special education, EL, and the health and wellness committees are chaired by the Director of Student Services, Teresa Skinner. And those have been working very well. Most committees every committee has had either one, two, I think the facilities has now had 4 meetings. And so again, we'll be sharing out tomorrow and getting some information together. Teaching and learning, I neglected to mention, actually has 4 subcommittees. There's one for each grade band. So PK to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. Those 4 subgroups meet every week. And then the entire group meets every week. And then, as I said, the leadership team meets every week to then review all the information that has come from those groups. We have a finance and personnel committee run by or chaired by Marilyn Gordon, the Director of Finance. There are many, many budgetary implications here, and even more than usual, a large number of revenue streams that are being utilized, and we have to make sure that they're utilized correctly. Again, we don't want anything to fall between the cracks. We don't want anything to be duplicated in ordering. We don't want anything to be left out, thinking one committee may have ordered something and they did not. And so they are reviewing all purchase orders. They are reviewing all funding sources. Just a quick example, even just technology has several funding sources between the capital funds available at the town, FY20 funds, FY21 funds, CARES Act funds, state money, and also they have just come out with several competitive grants, which I'll talk more about when we get to the budget line item. So there's a lot to keep track of there and to keep straight, and so they're going to be working on all of that. Facilities and supplies, that was the group that met, the very first group that we asked to meet, because there is such a demand for supplies and to get our facilities ready, whether that is disinfectant, hand sanitizer, soaps. We're looking at the ventilation of buildings. They're looking at the plumbing of buildings, as well as, of course, PPE. And there are currently they're at the point where they're pressure testing, we're calling all of the schools right now. So this past week has been spent with the principals of every building creating model classrooms with the custodians. They've really done a tremendous job using the recently released initial guidelines from the Commissioner of Education. They have utilized what furniture they have in the spaces that they have to come up with what the classes might look like to do a series of feasibility studies to see if it's possible to have the entire population back at school and if it's possible to do it safely. If we can't do it with our regular buildings and classrooms, we need to then obviously look at more creative approaches. Ultimately, if we can't come up with anything, we need to report that to the state, and the commissioner then will send a team down to assist us. So we're currently working on that. We've gathered a great deal of information this week, a couple snafus already, a couple of things that we have been able to work out. So that is still in development, as you can imagine, to go through every single classroom and common space of every single building with multiple lenses. It is very trying. We're doing a needs assessment everywhere, not just of the classrooms, but also of furniture and technology, surfaces, and so forth. So the facilities and supplies, you can see, has quite a lot of work to do. And that's why they started first. I will say that, as always, we are getting a great deal of cooperation from our colleagues on the town side. So as an example, the model classrooms in each school, the DPW is working with our custodial staff and our administrators and the fire department to go through the model classrooms to make sure that there is not too much surface area of tables and desks covered per regulations and guidelines, but also that all of the appropriate routes of egress are available and that the students and staff will be perfectly safe in the classrooms. So those things obviously take time between scheduling and physically going through buildings and schools and such. So we're getting that information as quickly as we possibly can. And then finally, communication and outreach. And I am chairing that one. And we have a great group of very invested professionals who are helping us work on communicating all of the above information to school committee, to parents, to staff, to the community, to students where appropriate, for example, the high school students. And so we are coming up with a series of ways to do that. We do have a very pressing need, and that is surveys, and that's part of our outreach. So before people see maybe reports or articles from us, they are probably going to be seeing surveys, because we need a great deal of information to make some very important decisions for September. Everything from, do parents at this point, and that can even change, but at this point, are parents considering using our transportation or driving students to school? Are they considering sending a lunch in with students or purchasing lunch? Are they, lots of questions that we are going to need in various groups. Do they have dedicated devices for students? Unlike asynchronous learning, if you have a synchronous remote learning environment, students need their own devices at the same time. And so if a household that maybe got through the remote learning of the spring, or even in a hybrid model, any sort of remote learning, if they were able to get through that because they had devices that their students were sharing, it's going to be less possible for that to happen. So we are also crafting questions trying to assess how many devices they need if students have a devoted device to them, so that they can meet with their teachers during the school day, for example. And then some more awkward things like, do you have reliable internet service? And this is an online survey. So we're trying to think of out of the box ways that we can contact people who may not have reliable online service. So everything from, lunch to connectivity, we are trying to pare it down to be a reasonable survey, but there's a great deal of information we need. And, in explaining all of those subgroups to you, you can imagine how much preparation is involved, how much expense is involved. And so I can't even begin to describe how critical it is for us, for parents, and for staff members to really take the time to complete the survey, really to thorough completion. Hopefully, I mean, we're going to send it at least once. Hopefully we can send it more than once, because as we know, things can change over time, and intentions of families can change over time, and we have to be ready to change our plans at a moment's notice. And not knowing what our ridership for buses is going to be, for example, or how much food we're going to need, those are critical operational decisions, and we can only get that from, you know, the current understanding of families. We know it might change, and people will not be obliged or obligated to stand by their answers. We're just asking them to inform us as best they can. I know it's summer. I know nobody really wants to sit at the computer and or fill out a hand survey, but I must impress how important that is going to be for our proper planning, just to make sure everybody is appropriately safe, protected, and receiving what they need this fall. So you're going to hear me talk about that probably as much as we talk about the census, which I will also put in a plug for people to remember, because that directly affects our school spending, our school funding. And so if you can go online and answer that very quickly, it takes about 10 minutes, we would really appreciate it. In terms of other information for COVID, I will say that we had a call with the commissioner. I had a call, the superintendents, this morning or afternoon. And I can't say that there was a great deal of new information, but a couple of things that are worthy of noting. One is that he is drafting a letter that he is sending directly to superintendents and to you, the school committees, to really implore us to not make a firm or a hard and fast decision about which of the 3 models we are committing to in the fall. We all know, everybody wants to know. We want to know, frankly, but there are many unknown variables at this point. For example, the final guidance hasn't even come from the commissioner's office yet and isn't expected for another week or 2. We don't have a state budget. We honestly have no idea what we're going to be getting from the state. There may be another stimulus package from the federal government, which is even separate, above and beyond the state budget itself. And of course, the virus rules at this point. So we don't know if there will be another outbreak. We don't know if Massachusetts will continue its course, which on this date, July 9th, which could be different on July 10th, we are in a very good situation, best in the country, really. We are among 5 states in the country that is on a trajectory to contain COVID, which we are not seeing elsewhere in our country. So we are very fortunate in that regard. However, we did just enter phase 3. If that has an effect, we won't know, obviously, for another week or 2. So these are all things that are, as much as we all want to know, and believe me, I am very concerned about childcare and scheduling and activities and things like that. But this is really just too important to not do correctly. We have to get this right for the safety and protection of our staff and our students. And so, you know, I would agree with the commissioner. You heard all the things we're working on. They take a tremendous amount of manpower. Fortunately, we have an unbelievable staff and so many people that are volunteering their time this summer to help us get this done. But it does take time. And believe me, we're working on it 27 hours a day. But there are a lot of moving parts to it and a lot of players that we have to have review our work and input we want to get from people. So a huge shout out to our 7 subgroups made up, of course, of school committee members, but also administrators, parents, students, and of course, staff, as well as town personnel. So we really appreciate all of those people pitching in and helping us in this surmountable, but certainly overwhelming task. Other news from the commissioner, information that they have coming in that quote unquote mid-July package. They have a frequently asked question coming, which our communication group is also working on one specifically for Easton. So they're going to have one state level questions. They're also going to give us a template for the plan that we have to submit on July 31st of the 3 potential remote, in-person, or hybrid. They're also going to provide us with stop and start protocols. So in the event in the hopefully unlikely event that there is any sort of outbreak, whether of symptoms or confirmed cases, they are going to give us a protocol to follow. So that's coming. They're also going to give us more guidance on transportation. So according to the quote unquote 3 feet rule right now for classrooms and spaces within buildings, if we apply that to transportation, we can fill our buses with 1/3 of our traditional ridership. That would mean we need 2/3 more buses. We absolutely do not have the funding for that. And so that is a perfect example of why it is important for us to know what is our ridership going to be. We don't want to, apply for grants or cancel programs in order to get transportation and then find out most people are transporting their own children. That would be devastating to our budget. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking for information on before we make final decisions. And then they're also going to give us more information about extracurriculars. The electives right now that they are most concerned about, I would say, are physical education, musical theater, chorus, and wind instruments. Those are the areas that the medical professionals have told us that we should pay special attention to in terms of precautions. And so they're going to give us some more guidance at that mid-month information as well. Let's see. He is considering reducing the 180-day, 990-hour requirements. One consideration is potentially freeing up days for where students wouldn't have school, but staff would for professional development. We've all acknowledged the incredible need for that, and the commissioner has acknowledged that as well. He has not approved that yet. However, he is waiting to hear the needs of districts, and so we'll respond accordingly. The other possibility is if we do have to stagger runs, because most of us, as you just heard, cannot afford to add buses, nor does our vendor, frankly, have the physical buses to add. If we have to do tiers, for example, 2 runs for the high school, 2 runs for elementary schools, he is considering shortening the school day minimally in order to allow students to get to school. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, because you are going to have students there earlier and then leaving earlier. And so that affects our teaching and learning plans, of course, but it is a possibility. And so, as we're planning all these things, I keep reminding people there are some things we don't have control over, but the commissioner does. And so getting early heads up on things like that helps us to think outside the box in ways that we otherwise really couldn't, because the mandates for time on learning are quite strict. So it's useful to know that it could be a possibility so that we can consider that in our planning. I think that's it for the most salient points, honestly. And we do have several orders in already. People have asked about our purchasing. We did have our mask order did come in. We are asking that all staff and students provide their own masks if they are able. Some are going to prefer certain masks over others. It's one thing we're finding. People really have preferences, and we of course want people to be as comfortable as possible. But we do have disposable masks now that will be available for use. And we are working on hopefully some community donations of cloth masks, particularly pediatric or the smaller size masks. So even though grades PK to 1 have been publicized as not having to wear masks, the commissioner did clarify today, and we certainly feel this way as well, that they are encouraged. And so, we will encourage breaks during the day, take the masks off, move further apart, things like that. But we are encouraging everyone to wear masks. And so it's very difficult to wear a mask in the first place, but to have an ill-fitting mask, first of all, is not appropriate for protection, but it also is extremely uncomfortable, especially for youngsters. So we're looking for donations of those. And these are the kinds of things I'm actually going to stop, because these are the kinds of things that the communications committee is actually going to be pushing out. You know, we're going to have a newsletter ultimately that has information for parents, tips and strategies, things like getting your youngster used to wearing a mask right now. You know, they go and play outside for a little bit, maybe have them wear a mask for a little bit, and just to kind of explain the purpose, how to put it on and take it off appropriately, proper hand washing, things that we're certainly going to cover with them, but it's helpful if they come into school and it's a bit of a habit already for them. So we're going to be sending out that, some resources for parents, professional development for accessing our online platforms, how to borrow devices, all of those things. But like I said, probably people are going to be hearing about the surveys first, because it's really, it's just critical for the operations of our subgroups to move forward and make some very important decisions. I think that's about it for the COVID update. There are a couple of budgetary things, but again, I think I'm going to save that for the budget line item because they go together.
Caroline?
Unmute myself. Leisha, I would really strongly encourage several surveys. Let me tell you what my thinking is on this. I'm seeing a lot of comments by parents on Facebook, and you know, they're kind of already agonizing over decisions about the fall. And I think that these kinds of decisions for individual families are going to evolve as, you know, more information becomes available, but also in relation to the pace of the virus and, you know, what happens with that. So I feel like if we have multiple surveys, families will be encouraged not to put off those discussions, those important conversations among themselves. And the surveys themselves, I think, can help trigger those conversations that really have to take place. Because if we were to, you know, if school were somehow starting next week, heaven forbid, but if it were, I think you'd have a number of parents that already would not feel comfortable, but that could change. I mean, we've got a couple of months. So I feel like one survey would be really wholly inadequate. That's just my own feeling, but I did want to kind of go on record about that.
Thank you. We totally agree. Our concern, again, is just getting the word out that, you know, we understand that people are traveling in the summer and maybe not checking email and just maybe not interested in filling them out. This is more critical than anybody can imagine. So we're going to definitely be reminding people and ask anybody who's listening or watching to be ambassadors of that message, that when these surveys come out, please, it only helps us service you better. And we absolutely want to do that. So any of the surveys come out, please complete them as thoroughly as you can.
So I have a question. It's not about that. Well, kind of the Chromebook. I know you said some of them came back broken. They're getting fixed. How many?
They're not
fixed. How many Chromebooks did not come back? Just ballpark.
Oh, well, we still have hundreds out because we have
Right.
students in summer school, and we left the online learning on all summer so that students could go back. They can look into different grades, they can review information, they can go ahead. So we allowed most people to keep them. Some of them are literally coming back, you know, the base and the screen, two separate pieces. So they're not fixable. And to be honest, we weren't prepared to let them be borrowed. So they weren't in, you know, typically you're going to get cases for them. You know, we're going to have care instructions. We did not have any of that. We were, you know, pivoting just like everybody else. So, you know, so I can't say they were necessarily abused or mistreated. It's just the nature of the, you know, the quickness of how we kind of put everything together. So hopefully these are all things that we're learning from. These are all things that the technology committee is taking into consideration. And, you know, I keep saying we're just getting wicked smart. So we're just gonna keep getting wicked smart.
All right, well, thank you. Are there any other questions about the COVID-19 update? All right. Number 10, Dr. Cabral, budget update. Do you need a drink of water or something?
I have my sparkling.
There you go. Go ahead.
So Marilyn Gordon, the Director of Finance, is here. We have literally one slide to share with you. So what we'll do is we'll give you a brief update on FY21, but then recap FY20 for you. I can start with FY21. There's not a lot of change. Well, there is no change in the budget, of course. Thank you for the citizens at town meeting for passing our town budget. So we have one as opposed to a 1/12 budget. And again, that could change because it's built on presumptions, very educated presumptions of our town administrator and his team, but presumptions nonetheless. And so we are following closely what the state is doing. The largest part of our funding is from the state. And so that is critical for us to know. So it could be better than we think. We don't anticipate though, because we use very conservative numbers. It certainly could be worse than we think. So barring a fourth federal stimulus, this is something that we are very concerned about and keeping our eye on. The only thing that I would say in terms of changes, if you will, is that the allocations for our grants did come out today. And, you know, that dreaded chapter or Title I we keep talking about was actually far less than we anticipated. They had given us a heads up on what it would be, and we expected it to be over $100,000 more, I think. So that was a huge, no. Oh, well, I'll let Chrissy talk about the grants that came out today. Did Title II and IV also come out today? Okay, so I'll let Chrissy talk about those. It definitely wasn't a boon for us. We are at a loss. Also, we have the CARES funding available to us, but as you know from prior conversations, that is very, very specific what it can be used for. It can't be used for any budget shortfalls. It can't be used for any loss of revenue. For example, when we weren't able to collect kindergarten tuitions, but we still had to pay kindergarten teachers. And so that created some hardships in our FY20 budget. We can't use it for anything like that. So it has to be really for very COVID specific items. I'll actually talk more about that for FY20 because the definition of that has evolved as the money has been released. It started just for PPE and food, and now it has been expanded, not as much as we would have hoped, but it has been expanded, and it did result in some savings in FY20 that we'll talk about. There are also, the state recently announced, people may have seen, a $25 million allocation for districts, and it was advertised as up to $225 per student. Well, we did find out that that is actually being disseminated in the form of competitive grants. Unfortunately, as you know, we do not fare well in competitive grants because of our demographics. We are competing literally with districts that are really working with much more diverse demographics that have been identified as more expensive to educate. And so we are, of course, concerned. We're applying for all of those as we can. The first one did just come out, and we are working on that one. It is a technology matching grant. As we read through the details, of course, it was billed as a technology matching grant, and we were hoping that any money we could potentially use. First of all, we weren't sure if ESSER money could be used for that. We have found out that it can, so that's great. But we were under the impression that it would be matched. We found out on the call today that our understanding of a matching grant is incorrect. That, for example, if we were to want to purchase $100,000 of technology, they may determine that the district is responsible for $90,000 of that, and that they will match that with $10,000. So that has been, again, a bit of a blow. So as we try to keep you updated on positive news, things are developing, and we're finding out it is not perhaps as positive as we thought. So that was a bit of a disappointment today. We're still obviously going for it, and the technology group is identifying areas where we can increase our infrastructure, get hotspots or connectivity for students who do not have reliable internet access, and of course, devices, not only to replace what we have, but as you can imagine, even to use devices in school now, we typically would have students share devices because we aren't one-to-one and don't have devices for all students. And now sharing anything is extremely problematic. So that's something that we're working on. The other grants have not been released yet. We believe that some, if not all of them, will be released next week. And again, we and the finance committee are staying on top of that. So, but I would just like to, while the news is not getting any brighter for next year, I do just want to punctuate that there are many more funding streams. They may not be huge and they may not get us out of our current state, but there are many of them. And so I just want to caution people, because everyone is well aware of where we're at in a very difficult budget year and with people unemployed, literally. I just want to make sure that people know that obviously these are not funds that could be used to employ people. They are funds that are typically earmarked for very, very specific purposes. Anyone who's ever written a grant is well aware that there are very, very specific purposes for which you can use funding. And it's extremely rare to ever get a grant where you can hire staff with it, because obviously grant funds dry up and they do not want districts to have staff that they rely on and one year and then next year not be able to have them. But we are staying on top of it. In terms, are there questions about FY21 before we just do a quick recap of FY20 and sort of reconcile FY20 for you?
Do you want me to just share about the grants quickly?
Oh, yes, please. Sorry. Absolutely.
So the numbers came out today, and we were anticipating about $125,000 cut in Title I, and we are now almost at $140,000 cut in Title I. So that's an additional $15,000, which is an interventionist, if most of an interventionist. And our Title IIA funding was reduced by just a little over $10,000. However, our Title IV, so Title IIA can be used for professional development. Title IV can also be used for professional development. It's kind of like they're shifting some of the parameters around Title II to Title IV. So I know that there has been, what the current administration is saying is that the research that is out there across the country, Title IIA, the parameters around Title IIA are not necessarily improving. The professional development is not improving instruction. That's what we heard at a conference. That's what their claim is. So they created Title IV that has different parameters still under professional development, and they're slowly shifting money there. So that is an increase of $10,000. So you see like kind of the balance out. Title II is a decrease of 10,000, but Title IV is an increase of 10,000. So that's kind of a wash. But the negative 140,000 is really the concern that we have with Title I. And I cannot reiterate enough how important it is to fill out the census, because that is where we get our funding through Title I. And even as an example, when we were allocated money for the CARES through the CARES Act, that money strictly was based off of Title I numbers. So the commissioner said today at the on his call that we are behind other states in filling out our census. So I don't know how we can just, increase our campaign to get people to, because the ramifications are years, that if we don't fill it out.
10 years.
10-year ramification if we don't fill it out.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just have a couple of questions about the ESSER funds. When we went to that, well, a couple of us listened to that MASC Zoom about budgeting and things like that. And it was mentioned that it's better to wait on spending the ESSER funds because they can be expended for a much longer period. That the CARES funds have a very short time frame in which you can expend those funds. But also, what is the difference? I know there's CARES, there's ESSER, but they had mentioned in that Zoom that the PPE and things like that could be reimbursed at a rate of 75% by MEMA, through MEMA, but by FEMA. Is that something that we're finding is the case, that separately some of the PPE is being reimbursed by FEMA indirectly?
So ESSER is the money that we received directly as a district, and CARES Act is the money that the town receives that we then, for the entire
Access, right,
Yeah.
right.
And so, yes, and I have to say, again, in cooperation with the town, they were very, very responsive in understanding that while they, police and fire and the DPW were expending a great amount or an amount of the CARES Act this summer, that really the bulk of the expenses for the school department was not going to be until August and September. And so they were excellent about moving forward to FY21, the majority of the CARES Act money specifically to be responsive to the school department. So I just want to reiterate our appreciation for that. In terms of the MEMA money, no, we have not seen that. And in our experience of FEMA and MEMA, those funds usually come 5 years after an event, or literally like 4 or 5 years after an event. I think we just got some payments for the huge snowstorms of 15 or something. So it's not imminently helpful unless there's some sort of change that we're not aware of yet. But no, my answer is no, I am not aware of that yet. But those federal dollars it's been very difficult to get immediate relief from money from there.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Marilyn, if you would like to join in, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and Marilyn's slide.
Can you hear me?
Marilyn, oh, okay, yes.
I can't see me though. I don't know. The video didn't. I don't know why the video isn't working.
Can you see the slide?
I can.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we're just about ready to close out FY20. We're not quite there. Oh, that's not the whole. Oh, do you have it set so that the?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We do have another probably week or two left of just closing out some open POs that we have that were put in, throughout the year that we're still waiting for final bills and for things to close out. But we did obviously have areas that we did have surplus in the budget for 20, and these were some of the areas: the regular transportation, special ed transportation, utilities, substitutes, overtime, unemployment, tutoring, therapy and evaluations, professional development, things that just didn't happen because of the closure. And then when we got to the end of the year, we had areas where we needed to spend some extra money.
So right before you get to that, just to clarify, just so that none of this sounds contradictory, in earlier meetings, we talked about the fact that our unemployment was getting to be outrageous numbers. We actually hadn't laid anybody off during the closure, but still we're paying over $20,000 a month for unemployment for various reasons that we discussed. The transportation, overtime, those are things that, as I had just said previously, the money from the federal government had been earmarked at first for food and PPE, and that has evolved so that they did start paying the unemployment. So we were extremely concerned about finishing FY20, as you heard several times, because of these unanticipated expenses. But then the federal funding was able to ameliorate some of those concerns. So if it sounds contradictory, it's because that trajectory did change, fortunately. And so it did result in it did result in a budget surplus in these areas to varying amounts, but certainly in these areas. And then to Marilyn's point, certainly the first thing we do at that point is look at the critically underfunded areas that we have. And we did do some purchases, and Marilyn can talk about these.
Right, so we did do a review of any facility repairs that needed to be made that weren't necessarily, in the budget, that we like try to get ahead of a few things, some technology equipment that needed to be replaced, school supplies where they weren't in school at the end of the year, but we had all the schools do an evaluation of what supplies they had and maybe buy a few things out of 20 so that we could reduce the budget in 2021, which we did do. And then we prepaid some special ed tuitions, and we had to replenish the kindergarten account for the tuitions that we had to reimburse the people that didn't pay for the last quarter.
Right, and we had been keeping you up to date that kindergarten line, because we are already at the highest tuition level in the state, that we weren't able to increase it to keep up with the costs of kindergarten, that all the 100% of the tuition goes to the kindergarten costs. But then obviously a great deal of the operational budget is necessary to augment that. But we have not been able to raise the tuition because it is amongst the highest in the state and really moves us away from our ultimate goal of being able to offer free kindergarten. And so because of that, we have been operating in the red for kindergarten. But as you can imagine, this year, having to continue to pay the staff in kindergarten because they were providing remote services without receiving the revenue from tuitions was extremely problematic. So we were able, because of the budget surplus items on the left, replenish some of the funds for the kindergarten account. So we did look at these critical areas and were able to do these things.
So, yeah. So this isn't final, but this is the area that where we think that we'll be when we do finally close.
So this reflects a net surplus, and particularly the purchase order reconciliations that Marilyn is talking about. We go back, and any that are still open, we try to make sure, was that ever purchased? Was it maybe not purchased because of the closure? Is it in transit? Is it late? Do we have to, check on the service of the goods, the receipt of the goods, et cetera? And so there will be a final reconciliation of that. But right now, Maryland's projecting $370,000 to $400,000 surplus that we will be able to return to the town. Obviously, that is extremely rare. I think last year was out of a almost $43 million budget. It was what, Marilyn, about $9,000?
$9,000.
So we've been running extremely lean. So this is obviously, well, I hope it's obvious, this is not a result of missed projections on the part of our business department. This is obviously due to a very extraordinary circumstance and, a school closure of literally 3 months. So do you have any questions about the surplus, the budget uses, or the net surplus for the town?
Where did we, what did we end up settling on with the transportation? Yeah.
So transportation, so we have 2 vendors, and for the time period between March 16th and June 15th, which was the last day of school, we had, just to go back for a second, because the public may not be aware of the need for the negotiation. So obviously the commissioner had encouraged all of us to negotiate with our vendors to be sure that they were available for us when school opens. It does not behoove any of us for these businesses to go under during this time period and not be available when school reopens. And they do have some operating costs that continue even if they're not picking up students and delivering students and so forth, in terms of the care of the vehicles, administrative staff, facilities, and so on. So we were in negotiations with both of our vendors, and we did settle on for VHS Transportation, which is our out of district special education carrier. We settled on 30% of our pre-negotiated contract. And for Lucini, so Lucini provides in-district special education, and it was the same for that 30% as it was for out-of-district transportation with VHS, and 35% for the general education buses, or the 17 big buses.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Marilyn. She did, a thorough analysis of the information provided by both of those vendors, and thank the vendors for negotiating with us and providing information necessary to help us determine what was really a fair negotiation on both sides. And I will say, for our area, 30% is actually, it seems to be emerging. There are many districts that have not settled at all yet, but it seems to be, excuse me, emerging as the standard.
Nancy?
Yes,
There was an
I can't
issue.
see you, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. There was an issue about the legality of paying for services not rendered.
Thank you.
So was that resolved?
It was, yes. So that was brought to the legislature, and again, that caused some lag in the negotiations, because certainly we didn't want to do anything that could even be close to construed as unlawful. And so, yes, the legislature did address that for this particular situation, and so we were allowed to negotiate in good faith and come to an agreement, an amendment to our contract with our vendors. Thank you, Caroline. I forgot to mention that.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Cabral or Marilyn or Chrissy? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Public comment. Do we have anybody in the public comment?
No, there's nobody there.
Okay.
Or no
thank you.
questions, I should.
Okay, and then superintendent notes.
No, I was just going to discuss the graduation and the cooperation with the Board of Health, and the fact that it was going to be on the agenda on Monday. So hopefully we'll have more news for that.
Thank you. Assistant superintendent notes.
I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Cabral said about the amount of volunteers we have on our subcommittees. Teaching and learning alone, we have 45 volunteers, and they are all volunteering their time, and multiple, we talk about that we had separate meetings. We have our whole group meeting and then our sub-group meetings, and they're even meeting outside of that time. So there is a ton of work that are being put into these plans, as well as all the other committees as well. And I really just want to commend our staff, our school committee members, our administrators and parents that are involved as well, and the town officials that are doing this on their own time to help our kids in Easton and our staff. This is a very, very crucial time for us. It is, education. This is not what we went to school for, but everyone is in this together. And I really get this feeling that we all want what's best for everyone. And I'm so proud of the collaboration and the conversations. So I just wanted to highlight that in my notes and say thank you so much to everyone that's volunteering.
Okay, is that it, Chrissy?
May I add one more item?
Yes.
Sorry. When Chrissy brought up pride, it reminded me of one of the 30 meetings I had today that I thought was very important to update you on. So in our I'm really switching gears here, but I think you would be very pleased to hear this. In our collaboration with on the school planning committee, we have several user groups similar to the subgroups for the reopening of school. And these user groups analyze every area of the building. Part of the conversation from the designers is really focused on, if you remember all the way back to the core values we established before we even started the process of building a new school. And among them was being environmentally responsible and focusing on sustainability. And so as the design has been developing over the summer, we've been meeting with the designers regularly. And one item came up that I thought might be interesting to some of our students. I know we have students that are very environmentally conscious. We have several clubs, we have classes devoted to this topic at the high school. And so I reached out to the department chairs, the science co-chairs, and asked them if they had students that would be interested in potentially meeting with the design team. And, hearing what the design team had already sort of proposed as ideas, certainly not final ideas, but proposed as ideas for sustainability in the new building, but also to come up with some of their own. We had an initial meeting. I have to say, Perkins Eastman is phenomenal. They're not just amazing, responsive listeners in terms of the feedback they're getting from staff and the community, but they were willing to meet with a group of students. They did a presentation on the current status of the project. They explained some of their sustainability ideas, and then they asked the students to really kind of brainstorm. We went apart, and I then had a meeting. I think Christy was there too. We had a meeting with this group of young ladies. They all happen to be young ladies. And we talked about, we threw around some ideas. I told them about a couple of things I had been thinking of in the process. I showed them the actual schematics of the building, the drawings we have to date of the interior, the exterior, and asked them if they wanted to come up with a presentation. And less than a week, I think, later, they reached out to me and said that they were ready to meet the designers. And so we had that meeting today. And I am getting the chills thinking about it. I am so grateful that our lead architect, Don Guerrero, had the foresight to ask their permission to tape it, because and she was really, again, being very sensitive and responsive, because her design team is extremely interested in what these students come up with, but she was sensitive to the fact that they might feel uncomfortable presenting to a group of designers, and so she asked if she could record it to share with them later. I have to get my hands on this, and really, you're going to want to see this presentation. I was bursting with Mama Bear pride. I can't tell you. I was texting Jane, Jane Martin, of course, the chair of the SPC committee, was on the presentation. I'm texting Jane. I'm texting Chrissy. I'm talking about how these kids are blowing my mind. They had ideas for the courtyard, for the groundscapes, for the interiors, for the ramp, for timelines of Blanche Ames, for the makerspace, for placards for students. They talked like teachers, in the sense that, they talked about putting up placards and saying, these are inventions of Blanche Ames. What would you like to invent? About lifting up placards that explain things that would be interactive for the littlest hands. Even having a timeline along the ramp in the building, but putting interactive footprint icons on the ground, knowing that our littlest learners were going to be treading this path and learning about Blanche Ames. It was just phenomenal. And so I mean, it's been meeting to meeting today, so I haven't even really had a chance to even sit down and process it, but I'm so grateful it's recorded, because I really want to make sure that we share it. I encouraged them to share it with the SPC, but in thinking about it now, I think it would be a great thing to even put on maybe even the SPC website for the public to see. It is phenomenal, and I am exceedingly proud of their efforts. And the designer was thrilled and you could see she couldn't even keep up fast enough with her notes. And before I had to actually leave right before the end of the meeting, because again, I was back to back today. Chrissy stayed. We haven't even been able to catch up yet, but she, before I even got off the conference call, she already said, we have a ton of this that we can use. I can tell you right now, there's a ton of this that we can incorporate already. So, I mean, everything from, I'll just give you another quick example. There are themes to the 4 grades, as you've heard before, right? From the seedlings of pre-K to the ground, the farming element of kindergarten, growing upward to the environment and the wetlands. And then second, which is literally earth and space science. And the designers had come up with very clever ideas of footpaths for the students through those wings. And so, for example, they had stars as the footprints for the space wing for 2nd graders. And the kids said, why not use astronaut footprints? I think that the kids would like to put their feet in the astronaut footprints. And they talked about, art murals from the art department. It was
the ceilings, and
it was thrilling. And so, I'm just so excited to hopefully share that with you. But just to let the public know that project is ongoing. We have multiple meetings weekly for that as well. And hopefully, if we're staying on our current timeline right now, that will go out to bid with a contractor in December, and break ground as soon as the ground thaws in this next spring. So, Chrissy, I don't know if I missed something really important at the end of the meeting. We hadn't been able to catch up, but it was just, I don't know if you can tell, I was on it was just the boost I needed in the middle of an extremely long day, put it that way.
Yeah, the only thing to add is that they are actually presenting at the next school planning committee meeting. Everyone felt that it was just the boost that everyone needs at this time, because it really brings it back to the excitement of the project and all the possibilities, the knowledge that these young women had around Blanche Ames was just truly impeccable, and how they wanted to showcase everything that she had done for our society was really impressive.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And I'm glad you're saying that. So for anybody watching between now and the next SPC meeting, it is a public meeting. It is posted. I hope it will stream live on ECAT, because what other meetings are at the same time, but it certainly will be recorded by ECAT, and all of our meetings are ultimately available on our SPC or the school project website. So please, you need a little treat, you need a little boost. I would encourage you to watch the next school planning committee meeting to see this presentation.
Thank you. Okay, school committee notes. Caroline.
Well, you know how I love to talk about epidemiology and things like that, right? I have noticed there have been a lot of everything from editorials to sort of scientific journals talking about, the return to school, how safe is it, how difficult it is to make that decision. And of course, there seems to be a consensus that for the most part, children are relatively unaffected by the virus. They have low incidence of illness. They don't typically become very ill. Some children do, however, but that it appears also that children do not seem to spread the virus as much as was originally thought. That said, there has been a lot of attention now being paid to the fact that staff and teachers, with good reason, have might be really concerned about going back to school in the fall. And there's, I know that I've seen several speeches by the head of the national teachers, one of the national teachers union, talking about really not enough focus on staff and teachers. So I do think it's important that we recognize that the job of teaching now has become so much more, I mean, they're truly essential employees now for our country. And they're, you know, it's going to take, in a way, a kind of courage to continue in the role that wasn't necessarily part of that role in the past. So I did think it was important to bring that up, because I know that everyone's very concerned about, of course, the children and the importance of their getting back to a school environment. But it's a very complex move to bring all those people back together in buildings and so on. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there's been a lot of discussion about the possibility of the White House withholding funds from schools. That is actually not even legal. It's not a thing that the White House can do. Congress appropriates funds, and I just think it's important if people become alarmed that school districts could lose more funding. That's not even something that is possible. But that said, we received such a tiny portion of our funding from the federal government. It's and actually most districts receive a very small portion of their funding, but I think our percentage is something like 3% or something very low. So, but in case, I mean, I had a couple of parents on Facebook were talking about fear of losing more funding, but I think it's a non-issue basically for us in terms of the federal government.
Yeah, we do.
Anyway,
To that point, we do get the majority of our funding from the state, and we do have a governor in Governor Baker and a commissioner in Commissioner Riley that are not of the mind that we can afford to have any cuts in funding right now. So that actually was a comment that the commissioner made today, that they are very like-minded in that, and so we can feel comfortable as we can in the knowledge that our state leadership, who we do receive the majority of our funding from, is extremely supportive of our efforts and supportive of funding those efforts. And to your point about staff, of course, that's 100% true. We have been working, and I'm very thankful to the administration of the EEA. We've been working very closely with them every step of the way. We have members represented in all of our subgroups, and we have been working with them about, and in fact, one of our meetings today was also with the EEA. Count them up. There were great many of them. And we are very grateful. Things have been going very well. We are just as concerned as about our staff as we are about our students. I'm sure you were referring to, the public who's thinking about their children, but yeah, we have no interest in putting any of our staff in danger or any of our students. So, and we are considering them separately, because as you mentioned, Caroline, the research is different for children and for adults. And so in all of our conversations so far, we have been talking about it differently in terms of distancing and messaging and all of that information. We are working on keeping our adults separated far more than on our the children, not because the children are any less valuable. We're just working on scientific research at this point. We're going above and beyond wherever we can, of course, for every person, but we are considering them differently because they're different, and they have different roles and they do different things throughout the day. So we are very, very cognizant of that. I do realize some states do not have that focus, and perhaps even somewhere in the Commonwealth. But if you're focusing specifically on Easton, it is definitely our major area of focus.
Great. The last thing I wanted to do is just ask Jen if you wanted to talk at all about the initiative that you've taken in terms of addressing what Alicia had mentioned earlier about masks for children.
Sure. Yep. I can talk about it now or when we get to.
I just wanted to make sure that you did mention
yes.
it. Because,
okay. I'll talk about it. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm done. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michelle?
I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Alicia and Chrissy for reaching out to us at the school committee and allowing us to have a seat and voice at the tables of the various subcommittees or groups that are going on this summer, and to really be able to work with teachers and hear what their concerns are, what their ideas are, and just be part of that entire conversation. But it's really, I mean, we just started, but it's already very eye-opening, and I just appreciate the fact that you're including us. Thank you.
All set? Okay. I also have the thank you after being at several meetings this week, as we all were. It's just, I can't believe how everybody, our whole Easton Public School community is very creatively thinking about ways to open safely and giving our students an optimal education at the same time. There are so many aspects to think about, from crayon and pencil use to snacks, lunch, buses, and 1,000 other things. I know one of the meetings I was at, Jeff Benson, he's already researched things from around the world and the country about chorus and band and orchestra. It amazed me. And same thing with the phys ed department. They just have so many good ideas. So I applaud all the work that everyone is doing. And I know sitting on a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet or whatever, I know I'm exhausted at the end, but then again, I'm old. But it's amazing what people are thinking about in their world. Another thing, just a reminder to everybody, fill out the survey that's going to be coming to you, and also fill out the census, because I say that at every meeting. And I just want to put one more kudos in, or good luck, to Rob Wheeler and his family as they move on. And Rob and his wife were both students of mine in 7th grade. So I didn't get a chance to teach any of their kids, but good luck to them as they make their move. And hopefully somebody will come in and be great. Also, thank you, Lynn, for taking these notes. Joe from ECAT for taking care of our meetings. I appreciate both of you doing that every meeting. And our next, we still have more to go, but our next meeting is August 6th at 5 o'clock Zoom. Okay.
Nancy?
There is one
Jackie.
comment in the Q&A. And it was from Joe Borman, just saying that they are planning on streaming the school planning committee meeting live.
Great.
Yep, so that'll be on Facebook Live for anyone who wants to see that.
Great. Jackie.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiment that I appreciate Leisha and Chrissy involving us in these groups. You know, I've attended a couple this week as well, and I think we're in a good position to be able to add in what we're seeing, parents' concerns and questions, and to kind of get that information back out to them. I think it's going to be kind of an all-out effort, as you said, to get the community, the parents especially, to respond to the questionnaire or the questionnaires throughout the summer, and really get as much data as we can to be able to work with. I also just wanted to share, I shared with the communication group earlier today, a couple of very interesting items I saw in a NEASC video where they interviewed a bunch of principals from a school in Germany that had just opened. And especially the elementary school principals had some very interesting ideas about how to reduce the anxiety for the younger kids and their families with coming back. And just a couple of those quick items, they said, you know, they did videos for kids showing them, this is what your drop off and pickup will look like now. This is what your new classroom is going to look like now. Here are ways we can say hi to each other. One that I really loved was they had Zoom meetings before school started, and all the kids and the teachers wore their masks so they could see what each other would look like in masks, so they could recognize each other a little better, and it wouldn't be so strange when they got there. I thought those were really, really interesting ideas. And I appreciate, in sitting in these meetings, listening to the teachers and the administrators and the other school committee members who had really done a lot of research already and had read a lot and had looked at what other school plans are around the world. And I think it's been I think it's going to be great because everyone's coming in with information that they've received from friends and family, and everyone has a little bit of a different perspective. And so I think this is going to be a really, really good working groups for us to go forward with. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Jen?
Sure. So definitely picking up where Jackie left off, I was really, really impressed with, just even on the Google Drive for the team that the meeting I was in this week, the amount of material that had already been gathered and shared, and we're only a week into the group meeting. So there's just a tremendous amount in our district in terms of expertise and resources and creativity and solutions. And it's really, really impressive to see that live and to see that work happening. So I know that, Chrissy and Dr. Cabral, you see it every day, but it's nice for us to get that perspective, to see that collaboration and expertise come together. As Caroline mentioned, one of the areas of focus for the special ed and English language learner community is getting community donations of masks. So one area that is more difficult to source right now for families where students could benefit from having masks with clear windows, or work with staff who are wearing masks with clear windows. Those masks can be harder they're not as readily available as full cloth masks, and they're quite expensive. You can get a cloth mask for a few dollars, and a lot of the clear window masks are, anywhere from $15 to $25 a piece. So just not a practical item to try to order in bulk. So I'm working with Teresa Skinner to put together a group of volunteers. So anybody who's watching this meeting, if you'd like to be a part of that effort, please reach out. And we'll add you to the list. And I was able to, using the all-knowing Facebook, get a shout out already, and we got really strong positive response from the community so far, with people who could either sew masks, or were also a strong response for people who can't sew but were willing to donate supplies or help with gathering or distribution or delivery or whatever's needed. So we really appreciate that, and that effort will get more organized over the next week, and we'll get those machines up and running and hopefully have a good supply of the window masks. And then as Dr. Cabral mentioned earlier, it would be nice to have a stockpile of cloth masks as well for students or staff who need them.
And we really appreciate that. As you noted, we're having difficulty getting the masks. We actually started ordering those already, and we're already on multiple vendors now. Even the raw materials are unavailable to the producers. Mm-hmm. And of course that drives up the price as well. So that is one of the items we're having the most difficulty getting right now. So when I said we had the delivery of masks today, it did not include the clear masks, because we're already on multiple vendors now.
Yeah. We have a comment in the Q&A again from Medjin now, saying thank you for that consideration of clear window masks.
You're very welcome, and a bunch of us look forward to mastering the learning curve of of working with clear vinyl. But Teresa Skinner,
I told you.
Teresa's ever resourceful, and actually as part of the Google Drive had already sourced some tutorials and materials lists, and she is working on getting some samples from somebody who's making them homemade. So there's definitely plans to have those tested by some students and staff, so that we can refine the best designs and have people make ones that will be really usable and workable for the students and staff who need them.
Thank you, Jen. Does anyone else have any comments or questions or add-ins? Caroline?
I should have asked you about this earlier, Leisha. I know that we're talking about a in-person school or a hybrid model. But in a way, this fall, regardless, we'll have to have somewhat of a hybrid model, I would think, because won't there be children who, well, either their families won't feel safe sending them, or they really can't, because of maybe pre-existing conditions or whatever, come to an in-person, be at school in person. So I'm assuming we'll have to have some sort of remote learning available for any youngsters who stay home for whatever reason.
Right. So technically that's hybrid, but really that's what the commissioner is calling the in-person model with medical exceptions. So the hybrid is when everybody in the district, goes to school for a week, does remote for a week,
Right.
or alternates days, or goes 4 days a week with 1 day remote, or there are just an infinite number of possibilities, of course, and they can be unique by district. But by the strict definition of the word, yes, of course, that's also technically hybrid, but it's not the commissioner's definition. While it is in person, there are students who are even hospitalized right now, so they obviously cannot attend school. So there will be an option for students with medical exceptions, but it's not considered hybrid unless it's something that we do as a district. It's a purposeful hybrid model.
But it'll be beyond medical exceptions, right? I mean, there will be a percentage of parents that don't feel comfortable yet sending their kids to school because of the risks that they feel are still present associated with the coronavirus. I mean, I think my understanding is that there will be flexibility in terms of providing those children with some sort of remote learning opportunity, even though they may not have an actual medical condition that would require it. Am I wrong?
That is what the Teaching and Learning Committee is working on, what our model will be. Those are the 3 things that they're working on.
Thank you.
We are also receiving more guidance from the commissioner around students coming and staying at home.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so enjoy everything that we have to offer in quarantine, and we'll see you in August.
What is that?
Do we need to make a motion, Nancy?
Oh my God, I do that every time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Star second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes?
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
I'll get it right one of these days. Bye, guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.